All right,
Oh,
welcome to Trail Talk. Rich, how are you feeling after Madeira, 10th place in 15:25? A wet one, a stormy run, slippy descents, I'm sure. Let's jump straight into race strategy. How did it play out for you? Just give us the high level race summary. We'll start off with that.
okay. Hey, man. Yeah, thanks for having me back. Yeah, back in the Northwest now and back to work, but it's a beautiful day out. Yeah, I think for the race strategy, I ended up kind of sticking to what I had planned. I had planned on kind of trying to run with Jeff and or Tyler. Unfortunately, Tyler couldn't make it out for the race, which was real sad. Um, but I ended up luckily people didn't take it out extreme out the gate, and so there was like a good solid group of people that weren't hammering up that first, like, whatever it is, 30% climb. So ran with it myself, stayed close, had some issues where I lost contact with the lead pack, but tried to keep it out of my head, and just stick to my plan of taking things easy until I believe it was like after maybe the second climb and huge descent down to the aid station in Kumiata, and then uh, it was actually ended up getting out of there was more runnable, and my legs felt good, and I just thought to myself, okay, now I'm going to start trying to test things out and push harder and see how the legs respond, and everything was responding really well. So pretty much from that aid on, I started to try to pour things on and was picking people up. I think I was maybe in like 17th at that point, and so just started rolling people, and made my way up to maybe like 12th or 11th or something towards the top of the Pico, and uh, then unfortunately, like, between the Pico and the observatory, which is the last aid station before you do just a long, maybe like 15K descent down to Puerto Cruz, I took a nasty fall on the stairs and banged up my knee. And it was a shame because my legs were feeling good and I was excited to really like push on the downhill. I don't think it held me back a ton, but I could feel it with every single step on my right leg, and so I think it just was a slight bit of holding me back there. Um,
Because you had thought that the sense is where when you were wanting to switch it on, that's where you would give it some.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So going touching on the start, why do you think that separation happened?
Yeah, I made a huge mistake, and I should have thought about it more when we talked in the pre-race. You asked me about socks, and I was kind of like, oh, all the socks I've got are good. They're socks. And I ended up grabbing a pair that I thought I had taken out of my rotation that are, they're not too big for me, but for whatever reason, the material just slips down. And it was slipping once we started our first descent down that, like, whatever 800-meter descent after you do that climb out of town. It started slipping down my heel and all the way underneath my foot. And
Oh
I just thought to
man.
myself, so yeah, so then on the second climb, on the big climb we started doing, I was having to stop every maybe 10-15 minutes to grab my sock out from underneath my foot. I tried tying my shoes a little tighter, and it kind of helped, but I didn't want to tie them too tight to, bruise my feet on the downhills. So that was one of those things where I was just kicking myself. It was totally a mistake that I made. Luckily, I had backup socks, but I wasn't going to get those until 35 kilometers in. So I kind of just was like, don't get blisters, and just stayed on it for a bit. So yeah, that slowed me down. And then secondly, another big mistake on my part, I think that I had my headlamp turned up a little too high when we were climbing. And I went through my first batteries in my headlamp within like 2 hours and had to change out my batteries. So I don't think anything was a huge waste of, like, really dropping me back in time, but it was enough to lose that contact with the front of the pack. And yeah, like I said, I tried to keep my head in it. And I felt like I did do a certain degree, but I think it was just too much for me to claw my way, all the way back up into the top five toward the end.
And how were you feeling in that first sort of, let's say in the dark part of the race, the night part of the race, in terms of nutrition? Were you able to keep on target and get the gels and things down?
Nutrition was my high point of the race. I was eating like a monster, like exactly on track with what I wanted to. Never had any stomach issues. Was able to eat a ton, and I felt great because of it. I did have one other one other snafu because I luckily ended up being able to use the same crew as Jason because we were close enough together. It ended up working out, which was awesome. But I had put some drink mix in my drop bag, but I'd also put along with it a post race recovery for the end of the race to have at the drop bag at the finish. And the my crew or my crew that ended up crewing me handed me two bottles, and I started up the big climb up to the Pico and took a sip, and I said, "That's chocolate. I can't drink that." And I was really worried the lactose was gonna like hit my stomach. It had been feeling so good, so yeah, I had to slow down, pour the bottles out, and fill them up at Levada. It was, yeah, again, a small break of time, but it was another little hitch.
They just like nothing major, just little small things, the type of thing
Stacked,
you
yeah,
look back at and laugh, right?
yeah, exactly.
You weren't laughing at the time, I'm
At
sure.
the, I mean, I chuckled a little bit, but yeah, it was kind of like because I took a sip of the one bottle and I was like, oh, that's my recovery, and figured that the other bottle was just water, and then took a sip of that one. They were both the recovery. Yeah,
Protein target ticked, just several hours too soon.
exactly. Yeah.
So
So yeah, those were some few things.
how did that work out with uh, sharing the crew with Jason? Did you just give them your kit bag, and then they knew what, apart from these bottles, they knew what to swap out for you?
Yeah, luckily I had just a huge stash of gels in my drop bag. So once we got to the drop bag aid, they would just open up my drop bag for me. I'd grab gels out, um, and then they would fill bottles with me. I just ended up using the knack for the drink mix on the course, and yeah, and it was fine. It was good.
And what about caffeine? When did you start taking that in? And did you take anything before the midnight start?
I didn't take any caffeine before the midnight start, um, and kind of my plan was like survive the night and then just like really start hitting it in the morning. Not really start hitting it, but that's basically at sunrise was when I started taking in like 100 every hour or so. Um, yeah, maybe a little bit less than that. Yeah, I think I ended up taking 400 total over the end of the race. So yeah, it wasn't quite every hour, but yeah, that's when I started doing it.
Are we talking about milligrams of caffeine here?
Yeah, milligrams. Sorry. Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
you took that in 100 per hour over 4 hours from the morning time.
Ish. Yeah, I think maybe every other hour. I'm trying to do the math of when I finish now. So yeah, probably every other hour or so, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's the sort of shit I like to hear on these lives. That. Whenever I hear that, I'm like, yeah, you would have been buzzing by the finish. Like
Yeah,
that
exactly.
caffeine would have been working for you. I like that.
Yeah.
That's proper strategic use of caffeine, and a nice dose as well.
Yeah, and that's
Spreading that out every couple of hours, you're not going to get like GI issues or anything.
yeah, like I said, yeah, my stomach felt good. I did at the drop bag aid at the base of the Pico. I can't remember what that aid's called in the big gymnasium there. I slammed a Red Bull as well, and I chugged it pretty fast, and that was the only moment where I kind of started running out of there, and I was like, oh, maybe I did that a little too fast. But yeah, I also had a Red Bull, so yeah, the caffeine was flowing. I never felt
Nice.
extremely tired, but it's just something for me that yeah, just like gets me going.
Yeah, I wonder why. Nobody ever felt tired with 600 milligrams of caffeine
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
before lunch.
I also didn't have any caffeine the week before the race either. So yeah, that also
Do you
helps.
know if you're a fast or slow metabolizer of caffeine?
Don't know.
No, I mean, it's a genetic thing, but I had
Okay,
my the 23andMe thing done, and I found out that I'm like a slow metabolizer. So basically, what that means is there's no point in cycling out
I see.
because it takes long for me to cycle out of it, and it takes long for me to cycle in it. So I don't like get a quick hit out of it either. But
Gotcha.
yeah, it's interesting to know that like I can't just take a caffeine gel and half an hour later get the buzz. It kind of
Sure.
takes a
Yeah.
while to work on me. Um, so then going into the morning time, how did the race unfold at this point? You were up to like 11th, 12th, and by the finish, you were only like 10, 15 minutes off, maybe 7th or 8th. So tell us how
Yeah.
the early morning sort of transpired for you.
Yeah. So, like I said, coming out of Inclinato, which was when the sun started coming up, it was a I was pleasantly surprised. Like looking at the profile on the website of the race, it doesn't look like there's that many runnable spots, but there actually were quite a bit. Like along you get these like interludes of levadas, um, and that climb in particular had a bunch of runnable space and was a long traverse, and people were still wearing their headlamps in the early morning, so I could see people, and ended up doing a lot of running through there, and picked off maybe one or two people along that, and then um, along the Pico, a climb up to Pico, I think two different people. So one local Madeiran passed me, and I thought to myself, like, man, that guy had a race plan to push later on in the race because he passed me well. And and then I think one other different person also passed me. But then later on, after we hit the high point, and once we started descending, was where I was able to then pick off maybe two people, and then towards the observatory, I picked up one more who was like basically walking. So that got me really excited that maybe I was going to be able to pick off a lot more. Um, then I had the fall. Still felt like I was moving well, coming on that long. Maybe it's got to be close to 15K downhill from the observatory all the way down to the seashore. I didn't see anyone that whole time. It was a long descent, and unfortunately, I was hoping I was gonna catch a couple more zombies, maybe moving slowly, and people were moving well still. And actually, there's some super steep pavement going down to Puerto Cruz, which is brutal for me. And one of the guys who I had passed a lot earlier, like in the night, he came just flying past me. And so at that point, that moved me from 10th back into 11th. So I was pretty bummed because at that point we were almost down to the seashore to the last 15K. But I got into that aid, and uh, my crew said there's a guy just left 4 minutes ago. He looked horrendous, so you can easily catch him. And so sun was out at that point. It was really nice out, and I just made it my mission to at least find that guy and pick him off for the end because I really wanted the top 10.
You
And I
could smell
found
the barn.
him. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's good runnable, like just rolling trail from that point on to the finish, pretty much. And so I was able to run the majority of it, and I still somehow I didn't pick him up until maybe 5K to go, and luckily he was moving slow on the downhill to a Levada towards the finish, and I came up behind him, and he just stepped off the side and let me go and didn't even try to chase.
No,
So
no
that felt
energy to
good.
even communicate.
Yeah, exactly. No words were said. He just stepped and I went. And then I just, turned the heat on, was trying to keep it a pretty good pace to the end there to make sure that he didn't catch me. And he didn't.
Cool. So, sorry, what distance was that, or what time of day roughly was that you fell and hit your knee?
So that was probably like 25 to maybe 30K to go. It was probably close to
So that was on the last
around
descent?
exactly the last huge descent, right before that descent. So maybe like noon or 1 p.m. was when that happened. Yeah.
And how is the knee now?
It's okay. It's inflamed. It was brutal on the flight home.
Are you
But
just sitting with it bent?
exactly, yeah. But I rode my bike into work this morning. It felt good to spin it. And I think it was just like a really bad knock, and then running more on it just caused it to get more inflamed. I don't think there's anything really, really wrong with it.
Cool. All right. Let's just touch on gear. And
Oh yeah.
we've already heard about the sock snafu and this type of stuff. So you changed the socks when you could, and you kept on the same 001 Nordas the whole way.
Yeah, I wore the 001s the whole way, and they were awesome. Even with like a really wet night, it was really pouring rain at some points through there. I didn't have any blisters during the race, no hot spots. The feet felt great the whole time.
I think that the tread pattern on the 001 is quite good in that type of dirt and terrain. You know, it was a little bit damp and it wasn't loose. I think that's where I kind of like it. I had one of my pairs resoled with the Zegalite Vibrams, and it's good for steep stuff, but it collects dirt, unlike the standard tread. So there's a bit of a trade off there. Did you change any other pieces of gear?
No, I didn't change anything else. Grabbed some sunnies at Porto Cruz for the last 15K and took my sleeves off. But yeah, I never put on a jacket even through the night. I just had a t-shirt and some sleeves on. And I kept the sleeves on until the last 15K. But yeah, didn't change anything else.
Cool. So you've come out of that race, you got your top 10 finish, 15:25, not a massive long, out for a day and a night type of thing. Lovely start to the season. What's the rest of the season look like for you?
Yeah, I'm excited. It feels like good momentum for me. I've got I might be doing a sky race in Alberta in June. I'm on the fence about it. We'll see how my recovery goes and how trying to get more turnover and steep running goes with the spring here in Washington. But I'm locked in to run the Grossglockner 110K in July. I'm really excited for that. And then in September, I think I'll be going back to Run Rabbit 100 to get my Hard Rock qualifier, and it's looking like it's going to be a nice competitive year there. So I'm really excited for that.
You'll be going into that as obviously one of the favourites, potentially big check at the end of that race, which is always nice.
Yeah. As of right now, Dave Stevens, who won last year and had a great time there, is going to run, and a few other people that'll definitely be pushing a cool race. So yeah, I'm excited for it.
Cool. That'll make it a fun one to follow this year.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, we've brought it perfectly up to 20 minutes, so that is call time on the live. I appreciate it. Thanks for checking in with us pre and post race. It's been a lot of fun, and we'll catch you soon, mate.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, man. We'll be in touch.
All right, see you later.